Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into a theological argument that really challenges everything we think we know about a central figure in end times prophecy. The source material for this explainer goes all the way back to the most ancient texts to ask a pretty provocative question. Right, so the argument we're digging into today is that the common view of this figure, it barely even scratches the surface. It suggests that if we're all just looking for some single future dictator, we might be missing a much older, much more complex system that's been at play for centuries. Okay, let's get into it. So this entire investigation starts right at the beginning of the biblical narrative, with what the source calls a foundational declaration of war.
Now, according to the source, this isn't just about two people in a garden. This verse is presented as the starting pistol for a conflict between two spiritual bloodlines, or seeds, that are destined to be at war throughout all of human history. This sets up a fundamental duality that runs through the whole Bible. On one side, you have the lineage of the Messiah, the woman's seed. But on the other, you have this parallel opposing lineage, the serpent seed, which is basically presented as the very origin of the Antichrist spirit. And what's really fascinating is that the Bible hardly ever uses the actual word Antichrist. Instead, this figure gets over 33 different titles in the Old Testament alone. The source argues these names aren't just random nicknames. Each one, like the Assyrian or the lawless one, is like a different piece of the puzzle, revealing another side of this very complex character. Okay, so now we're going to jump over to the book of Daniel, which lays out this incredible prophetic timeline of world powers, specifically the non-Jewish or Gentile powers that were destined to dominate Israel. The source really zooms in on Daniel's vision of this giant statue. It lays out a very precise sequence of 4 Gentile empires, one after another. You have Babylon, then Persia, then Greece, and finally Rome. It's presented as this perfect historical roadmap that played out exactly as foretold.
But here's the thing. The prophecy doesn't stop with Rome. It points to a final kingdom that's going to rise up from the ruins of that fourth one. And the source argues that figuring out the true nature of this revived Roman Empire is the absolute key to identifying the end times ruler it's going to produce.
So to get a handle on this final empire, the source does something pretty bold. It puts forward this provocative idea that maybe we should be looking at Islamic eschatology, its own end times theology, for what it calls a potential mirror image of these prophecies. And yeah, this is where the analysis takes a very sharp, unexpected turn. This chart really gets to the core of the argument. You see, in Islamic tradition, their great savior figure, the Mahdi, is said to have a lot of characteristics that line up with the biblical Antichrist. And at the same time, their ultimate villain, the Dajjal, is described as an evil figure who pretends to be the Jewish Messiah. As the source lays it out, it's a shocking, perfectly inverted parallel. And that brings us to what might be one of the most surprising claims in the whole analysis. The source calls into question the very origin of the famous number of the beast, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, the Apostle John wasn't seeing Greek letters at all. The theory being presented here is that what got written down as the Greek number 666 was actually a vision of something else entirely, the Arabic script for Bismillah, which means in the name of Allah, right next to the symbol of crossed swords. And if that's true, well, it would mean the mark of the beast isn't some number you have to calculate, it's a banner, a symbol you can actually see. All right, now we're going to pull on another historical thread, one that's lesser known but, according to the source, is absolutely crucial. It's something they call the everlasting hatred, and to understand it, we have to go all the way back to the book of Genesis. So this whole thing starts with twin brothers, Jacob and Esau. Esau, who also went by the name Edom, famously sells his spiritual birthright to his brother for just a bowl of stew. And this one act, this moment of despising his inheritance, is said to have kicked off an ancestral hatred that has been echoing through history ever since. The history of this lineage is just fascinating. So Esau's descendants, the Edomites, they get pushed out of their homeland and end up settling in southern Judea. Over time, they become known as Edomians. And through some slick political moves, the Roman Empire ends up installing one of them, a guy you might have heard of, Herod the Great, as the King of the Jews. The lecturer then connects this hidden history to a very cryptic warning from Jesus himself in the book of Revelation. The question is posed, could Jesus be referring to people like the Herods, people who held power and claimed a Jewish identity, but whose family tree actually went back to Esau, Israel's ancient rival?
So we followed a bunch of different threads here. We've got prophetic timelines, theological parallels, these hidden histories. The big question now is, how does it all come together?
And this slide right here, this is the ultimate takeaway from the source material. The Antichrist is presented not as a single person, but as this massive composite system. It's a political system, a religious system, an economic system, and a spiritual system, all working together. It's an ancient spirit of opposition that just shows up in different forms throughout history. And so that brings us to our final provocative question. This whole interpretation challenges us to look past the idea of a single villain and instead to see a pattern, a spirit of Antichrist that's been working behind the scenes for thousands of years. It suggests the final act might not be the arrival of something totally new, but the culmination of something that has been right here, hiding in plain sight, all along.